Hello, my friends. Welcome back. If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I never thought a vacation could go so wrong. I had been dreaming about this trip for months, just me and my closest friends, escaping the city for a week in the mountains. We found a charming cabin tucked away in the woods of Vermont, far from the bustle, surrounded by nothing but towering pines and winding dirt roads. The photos online made it look perfect, cozy, secluded, and entirely private. What could possibly go wrong? From the start, things felt off. Not overtly frightening, just subtle, the kind of uneasy feeling you push aside because you want to enjoy yourself. When we arrived, the air was unnaturally still. No birds, no wind rustling through the trees, just the dense silence of the forest. The cabin itself was quaint, all warm wood and stone, but there was something about the way the windows reflected the forest like dark, watchful eyes. I shrugged it off, telling myself I was imagining things. The first night was uneventful. We cooked dinner, drank some wine, and played card games by the fire. The woods outside seemed alive, but I couldn't tell if it was just the sounds of the wind or something else. I kept catching glimpses of movement through the windows, shadows darting between the trees, too quick and precise to be normal. Every time I mentioned it to my friends, they laughed it off. "You're just jumpy," one said. "It's the mountains, relax." I wanted to believe them, but deep down, something was gnawing at me. On the second day, we decided to explore the forest. There was a trail leading up a nearby hill, supposedly ending at a scenic overlook. I volunteered to take photos, my camera swinging around my neck as we trudged through the undergrowth. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt. It wasn't oppressive exactly, just wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I looked behind me, I thought I saw a figure between the trees, tall and unmoving, always out of focus. When I pointed it out, my friends teased me. "Your imagination is running wild," they said. By mid-afternoon, we reached a clearing. The view was breathtaking. The valley stretched endlessly, the mountains rolling like waves in the distance. I set up my tripod for a panoramic shot and turned to call out to my friends, but they weren't there. Panic shot through me. I yelled their names, my voice echoing through the trees, but there was no reply, just the faint rustle of leaves. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just the trees. My heart hammered against my ribs. I ran back toward the trail, hoping to catch up with them, but the forest seemed to shift. The path I had taken didn't exist anymore. Every tree looked the same. Every turn led me deeper into the woods. I was lost. I screamed their names again, but only the wind answered. That night, I stumbled back to the cabin, exhausted and shaken. My friends were there, sitting by the fire, calm as if nothing had happened. I couldn't bring myself to explain what had occurred. They didn't notice my pale face, my shaking hands, the terror in my eyes. They were laughing, recounting their hike, oblivious to my ordeal. The third day was worse. At night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside, the creak of the porch, the whisper of the wind, felt deliberate. It wasn't just the forest anymore. It was the cabin. I kept hearing scratching at the walls, soft but urgent, like nails against wood. I got up to check, and the front door was wide open. I hadn't left it unlocked. My friends were asleep, snoring softly in their rooms. I slammed the door and checked the locks. Nothing seemed disturbed, but the sense of being watched was suffocating. The fourth day, I started noticing more anomalies. Things moved. Small things, subtle. Cups shifted slightly on the counter. Chairs weren't where we left them. A window cracked open when I was sure I'd closed it. And then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind, but the words were distinct. My name, over and over, drawn out and soft, coming from the forest, from the shadows. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. My friends still laughed when I mentioned it. "You're imagining it," they said. But I knew I wasn't. The fifth day, I begged us to leave. My friends protested. They were having fun. I insisted we pack up, that something was wrong with this place. They finally relented, and we began loading the car. That's when I saw them, at the edge of the tree line. Figures, dozens of them, motionless, watching us. I froze. They were human-shaped, but their features were blurred, twisted, like smoke solidified into form. My friends didn't see them. I grabbed their arms, trying to pull them toward the car, but the figures moved closer. I swear they were floating, gliding across the ground without sound. We got into the car and sped down the dirt road, hearts pounding. The forest seemed endless, stretching farther than it should. No matter how far we drove, the trees pressed closer, the road twisting unnaturally. Shadows danced across the windshield, shapes pressing against the glass. I turned to look at my friends. They were silent now, eyes wide in horror. I realized they hadn't seen the figures until that moment. Then, the engine died. We were in the middle of nowhere, and the figures were closing in. The air thickened, and I felt a cold, sickly weight pressing down on me. My stomach churned as I realized we couldn't escape. One figure stepped closer, and I could see its face, or what I thought was a face. Hollow eyes, skin stretched tight over bone, mouth open in a silent scream. I screamed, fumbling with the keys, trying to start the car. Nothing. The figures surrounded us, moving closer, their whispers now loud, clear, insistent. My friends were screaming too, but their voices sounded distant, like they were underwater. I felt myself being pulled out of the car toward the nearest figure. Its hands were cold, impossibly long, and it gripped my shoulders with a strength that defied reason. Then everything went black. I woke up in the cabin. The sun was just rising. My friends were gone. The cabin was empty, quiet. No signs of struggle, just normalcy. I ran to the car. It was parked in front of the cabin, engine running, as if nothing had happened. I tried to call my friends, no signal. I left the cabin, ran down the road, and eventually found a gas station. The clerk looked at me strangely, but I didn't care. I asked about my friends, the cabin, the forest. He blinked, confused. There's no cabin around here, and nobody's reported missing anyone recently. I don't know what happened. I don't know what I saw, or if I even saw it at all. But I know I'll never go back to the mountains. Every time I close my eyes, I see those figures, gliding silently through the trees, watching, waiting. And sometimes at night, I hear the whispers again, soft, insistent, calling my name. I was supposed to have a relaxing vacation. Instead, I survived something I can't explain, and I don't think I'll ever escape it. The forest, it's still out there, and I'm certain it's waiting for me to return. I should have known better. Everyone warned me. My friends, my co-workers, even random strangers on travel forums, they all said, "Don't go to Black Hollow." But the pictures online were mesmerizing. A hidden lake surrounded by jagged cliffs, pine forests stretching as far as the eye could see, and a tiny cabin that looked like something straight out of a fairy tale. I needed a break from the city, a real escape. So I ignored the warnings. I told myself that I was brave, adventurous, careful. I arrived at Black Hollow late in the afternoon. The drive had been long, twisting through winding mountain roads lined with towering pines that seemed to block out the sun. By the time I reached the cabin, the sky was a bruised purple, the kind of color that makes everything look a little unreal. The cabin itself was smaller than I expected, but charming. Wooden shingles, smoke curling from the chimney, and a small dock leading to the still, black lake. I unpacked quickly, eager to explore before nightfall. I decided to take a walk down to the lake. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. As I approached, I thought I saw something move beneath the surface, a flicker, a shadow. But when I blinked, it was gone. I chalked it up to the fading light and my imagination. The first night was quiet, almost too quiet. I made a fire in the cabin's stone fireplace and settled in with a book, trying to ignore the feeling that I was being watched. At first, It was subtle. A rustle in the trees, a twig snapping outside the window. I told myself it was just animals. But then I heard a soft whispering, almost like someone was calling my name. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the wind, or so I hoped. The next morning I decided to hike the trail behind the cabin. The map I had found online was vague, showing only the general layout of the woods and the lake. The deeper I went, the denser the forest became. Sunlight struggled to pierce the canopy, and the air felt colder than it should have. I kept hearing noises behind me, footsteps, soft but deliberate, like someone or something was following me. I stopped. "Hello," I called out. No answer, just the rustle of leaves. I tried to calm myself, telling myself it was probably another hiker, but then I realized I hadn't seen anyone else the entire day. By mid-afternoon, I reached a clearing. There was an old stone well in the center, half collapsed and covered in moss. Something about it made my stomach churn. I felt drawn to it, compelled to look inside. Peering over the edge, I saw nothing at first. Then, at the very bottom, I saw a pair of eyes staring back at me, wide, black, unblinking. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and the eyes vanished. I ran back to the cabin, panic rising. When I arrived, the door was wide open. I was sure I had locked it. Inside, everything seemed normal. The fire had gone out and a chill ran down my spine. I locked the door again, double-checked the windows, and tried to convince myself it was just nerves. That night, the whispers returned. This time, they were louder, insistent, echoing through the cabin. My name, again and again. I bolted upright in bed, heart racing. The voice was close, too close, like it was standing right next to me. I flicked on the flashlight, but the cabin was empty. And then I noticed something. On the wooden floorboards, scratches, long, deep claw-like, leading from the door to my bed. I wanted to leave immediately, but my car was stuck in the mud. Heavy rain had started in the evening, turning the dirt road to thick sludge. I was trapped. The following day, I tried to make sense of it. I scoured the cabin for anything unusual. I found old journals in a drawer, yellowed and brittle. They belonged to the previous occupant, a man who had stayed in the cabin decades ago. His entries started normal enough, descriptions of the lake, the woods, the serenity, but soon they descended into something horrifying. He wrote about whispers calling his name, shadows moving independently, and a presence that watched him constantly. His last entry was smeared with what looked like blood. It waits in the water. It waits in the trees. It knows your name. Don't look into it. I tried to convince myself it was just a story. But as the day wore on, the forest seemed to close in. The shadows grew longer, darker. The wind carried voices, distant but recognizable. I heard my name again, whispered through the trees. By nightfall, I'd barricaded the cabin as best as I could. I slept fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. That's when I noticed the lake outside the window. The water was moving, though there was no wind. Ripples spread across its surface, forming shapes that resembled figures standing at the shore. They had no faces, just dark voids where eyes should be. They were staring at me. I couldn't take it anymore. At first light, I packed my bag and waded through the mud to my car. The road seemed different, twisted, unfamiliar, as if the forest had shifted overnight. And then I saw them. Dozens of shadowy figures emerging from the trees, gliding toward me silently. Their presence was suffocating, pressing against my chest. I ran, not thinking, and stumbled into my car. The engine wouldn't start. The figures drew closer, their whispers a chorus of all the voices I had heard since I arrived. My hands trembled on the wheel. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. I realized with a sickening certainty that the figures weren't just shadows. They were alive. And they wanted me. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my flashlight and ran into the woods, hoping to lose them, hoping the forest would protect me. But the forest was alive in ways I had never imagined. Every tree seemed to twist and shift, blocking my path, leading me deeper. I ran until my lungs burned, until I could barely stand. And then I saw it. The lake. It wasn't a lake anymore. It was a black mirror, reflecting not the sky, but me. Or something like me. I screamed and my reflection screamed back, mouth opening wider than possible, eyes hollow and endless. I stumbled backward, fell into the water. I woke up in the cabin. The fire was burning. Morning light streamed through the windows. My car was gone. My bag was gone. I was alone. For a moment, relief washed over me. Maybe it had been a dream. Maybe I had passed out. But then I heard it. A soft whisper from the corner of the room. My name. I don't know how long I've been here. Days? Weeks? Time feels wrong in this place. I've stopped trying to leave because I know I can't. The forest watches. The water watches. And sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I see something staring back. Someone or something that isn't me. If you ever find a cabin in Black Hollow, don't stay. Don't look at the water. Don't answer the whispers. Because once it knows your name, it will follow you forever. And I've realized the worst part. It doesn't need to trap me in the cabin. It's already inside my mind. It's already part of me. And one day, when you're not paying attention, it will call your name too. I had been looking forward to this vacation for months. After a brutal year at work, I needed to escape the city, escape responsibility, and just breathe. When I found the old lakeside cabin in the Smoky Mountains online, it seemed perfect, remote, rustic, and completely private. The pictures were almost too good to be true. Dense forests, a crystal clear lake, and a wraparound porch that promised peaceful mornings with coffee and quiet evenings watching the stars. I arrived late on a Friday evening. The sun was dipping below the trees, casting long shadows across the gravel driveway. The cabin was even more charming in person, though something about it made me hesitate, an unshakable feeling that I wasn't entirely welcome here. I shrugged it off as fatigue from the long drive. After unpacking, I decided to explore the area around the cabin. The lake was just a short walk through the woods. The water was still, reflecting the sky and the silhouettes of trees perfectly. I took a few photos trying to capture the serenity, but I felt like something was off. I thought I saw a figure moving along the far shore, tall, thin, and motionless. When I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was a trick of the light and headed back to the cabin. The first night was unsettling. The forest around the cabin was alive with sounds I couldn't identify. Low rustles, soft thuds, the snap of a branch far away. But the thing that got to me most was the silence in between. At 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of someone whispering my name. I jumped out of bed, flashlight in hand, and searched the cabin from top to bottom. No one was there. Only the wind, or so I tried to convince myself. The next morning, I decided to hike one of the nearby trails. It was meant to be a quick morning walk, just to stretch my legs and enjoy the scenery. The forest was beautiful, but it quickly grew darker as I ventured deeper. The trees thickened, blocking sunlight, and the path twisted unnaturally. Every now and then, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting another hiker, but saw nothing. The feeling of being watched gnawed at me. I stumbled upon a small clearing where an abandoned campsite sat, rusted fire pit, toppled chairs, and a thin layer of leaves covering everything. What caught my attention was a series of crude carvings on the trees, circles, strange symbols, and what looked like tally marks counting up endlessly. My stomach churned. I took a few photos and decided to leave. As I stepped back onto the trail, I realized it was gone. The path I had just walked didn't exist anymore. Every tree looked the same. I tried to retrace my steps, but the forest seemed to rearrange itself, leading me deeper and deeper. Hours later, I found my way back, or so I thought. I stumbled onto the cabin, but something was different. The porch steps were broken, the front door had scratches that hadn't been there before, and the cabin smelled wrong, metallic, like blood. I called out, but there was no answer. I sat on the floor trying to calm down. My phone had no signal, and the battery was dying. Panic was creeping in. That night, I barely slept. The whispering returned, louder this time, and it wasn't just my name. I heard other voices too, faint cries, laughter, and urgent warnings. I pressed my hands to my ears, but I could still hear them, coming from the walls, the floor, even the air itself. Around 3 a.m., I saw a movement outside my window. The shadows of people, or something like people, shifted between the trees. They didn't move naturally, more like the forest itself was shaping them. The following morning, I decided to leave. I packed what I could into my car and drove down the gravel road, praying to see the main highway. But the road twisted unnaturally, turning back on itself. I felt trapped, like the forest itself had swallowed the path. Then I saw them, figures standing between the trees, watching me. There were too many to count. Their faces were obscured by shadows, their bodies too elongated to be human. They didn't move, but I felt them everywhere. I tried to speed past them, but my car wouldn't start. The engine turned over briefly, then died. I was surrounded. My mind raced. The figures began to move, gliding silently, effortlessly, closing in from all sides. I screamed, pounding the steering wheel, but it was useless. They didn't respond to sound, only to my fear. In desperation, I ran into the forest, abandoning the car. The trees pressed in on me, branches scraping my arms and face. Every direction looked the same. I called out for help, but only my voice returned, distorted and hollow. Then I saw it. A small pond I hadn't noticed before. The water was black and perfectly still. Something in the depths reflected me, but wrongly. My reflection was twisted, eyes hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. I stumbled back, tripping over roots and rocks, and fell into the pond. When I woke, I was back in the cabin. Morning light streamed through the windows, the fire was still burning, and the cabin smelled normal. My car was gone. My phone had signal again. Relief washed over me, but it didn't last. From the corner of the room came a whisper. My name. Soft, deliberate, and unrelenting. I packed again, this time ready to leave, but the forest had other plans. The road was gone. The cabin seemed to shift subtly every time I looked away. Night fell faster than it should have, and the whispers grew into a chorus. I couldn't tell where they were coming from. I barricaded the windows and slept sitting upright, clutching a baseball bat, knowing I wasn't alone. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time lost meaning. The cabin became my prison. Every mirror, every reflective surface showed something I didn't recognize. My face, yes, but twisted, haunted, almost like a warning of what I would become. The forest wasn't just outside, it was inside me now, in my mind. One morning, I heard a knock at the door. Tentative, polite, human. I screamed, but no one answered. When I looked through the peephole, there was nothing. Only a shadow moving between the trees. I realized then that leaving was impossible. Not because of the forest, not because of the cabin, but because whatever had been following me wasn't just a thing out there. It was part of me now. I've tried to write this down, hoping someone will find it. Maybe it's a warning, maybe it's a plea. If you ever see a cabin by a lake in the Smoky Mountains, don't go there. Don't think you can escape. And whatever you do, don't look into the water, because once it sees you, it knows your name, and it will follow you, always. I always thought vacations were supposed to be relaxing, the escape, the quiet, the chance to forget about work, bills, and life in general. I had been craving that for months, so when I found a small, remote cabin on Shadow Lake, nestled deep in the forests of northern Michigan, I didn't hesitate. The photos online were perfect. A cozy wooden cabin with a porch overlooking a mirror-like lake, dense pines surrounding it, and not another soul for miles. What could go wrong? I arrived late on a Friday afternoon. The sun was already low, spilling orange and purple across the water. The drive up was long, winding through narrow dirt roads, thick with trees so dense the sky barely showed. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the cabin looked exactly like the photos, except it felt wrong. There was no welcome sign, no feeling of warmth, just the quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. I shrugged it off. I was tired, my nerves frayed from the long drive. I unpacked, then went down to the lake. The water was still, reflecting the darkening sky like glass. I saw something move at the edge of the tree line across the water, just a flicker. But when I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was my imagination. The first night, I barely slept. The forest seemed alive in ways I couldn't describe. I kept hearing subtle sounds, a branch snapping, leaves rustling, almost like someone, or something, was walking near the cabin. Around 2 a.m., I woke to whispering. My name, barely audible, coming from somewhere outside. I grabbed my flashlight and checked the perimeter. Nothing. Just the trees, standing still and dark. The next day, I decided to explore the nearby trail. It was supposed to lead to a scenic overlook. The path was easy at first, sun filtering through the trees, birds chirping. But as I hiked deeper, the forest grew denser, darker. The air felt colder, and every now and then, I thought I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting another hiker, but there was no one. Eventually, I reached a small clearing. In the center stood a decaying wooden cabin, smaller, older, and entirely different from mine. I approached cautiously. On the door were symbols I didn't recognize, carved deep into the wood, circles, lines, and marks that almost looked like tallying. My stomach churned. I felt drawn to the door. Against my better judgment, I peeked inside. The air was thick, musty, and smelled of rot. On the floor were objects scattered haphazardly, old photographs, broken toys, and journals. I picked up one of the journals and opened it. The pages were yellowed and brittle, filled with the frantic handwriting of someone who had stayed here long ago. They wrote about shadows moving on their own, whispers calling their name, and the forest watching. One entry chilled me to my core. It waits in the water. It waits in the trees. It knows your name. Don't look at it. I dropped the journal, heart racing. When I looked up, the clearing was empty. The forest seemed unnaturally still. My instincts screamed at me to leave. I turned back toward my cabin, but the path had vanished. Every direction looked identical. Panic surged. I ran blindly, branches whipping my face and clothes, until I finally stumbled back to my cabin as the sun dipped below the horizon. That night was worse. The whispers returned, louder, insistent. Not just my name this time, other voices too. Children crying, adults shouting, laughter that didn't belong anywhere. I tried to sleep, barricading the door and windows, but it didn't help. Around 3 a.m., I saw movement outside. Shadowy figures glided between the trees, tall, thin, faceless, and impossibly fast. I froze, too terrified to move. They didn't approach the cabin, not yet, but I knew they were watching. The next day, I resolved to leave. I packed my car and drove down the dirt road, praying to see the highway. But the road twisted unnaturally, as if the forest itself were reshaping it. I began to notice shadows along the roadside, always at the corner of my vision, never fully visible. Then I saw them, figures stepping out from the trees. They were faceless, their forms elongated, moving with a fluid, unnatural grace. I tried to speed past them, but the engine sputtered and died. I was trapped. I grabbed a flashlight and ran into the forest, hoping to find another road, another way out. The trees seemed to close in, branches like arms grabbing at me, guiding me deeper. My heart pounded in my chest, every breath ragged. I thought I saw a small pond ahead, black as obsidian. And then I saw it, my reflection. But it wasn't right. The eyes were hollow, black pits that stared back at me with hatred. My reflection moved independently, mimicking my every action, but with delay, as if mocking me. I stumbled backward, fell to the ground. The reflection in the water smiled, and I swear it whispered my name. I scrambled to my feet and ran until my legs gave out. When I awoke, I was back in my cabin. Morning sunlight spilled through the windows, everything looking normal. My car was gone. My bag was gone. For a moment, I thought it had been a dream. But then I heard it, a whisper from the corner of the room. My name. Soft, deliberate, and unrelenting. I packed again, desperate to leave. But every exit I tried led me back here, to this cabin, to Shadow Lake. The forest was no longer just outside. It was inside me. Every mirror, every window, every reflective surface showed something wrong. My face twisted, my eyes hollow, my mouth open in a silent scream. I've tried to leave notes, journals, anything to warn anyone who might come here. But I know it won't help. If you ever see a cabin on Shadow Lake, don't go. Don't step inside. Don't look at the water, because once it knows your name, it follows you forever. I hear it now, every night, whispering, calling, waiting, and I know that one day it will reach out to you too. I thought I knew what I was getting into when I booked the cabin for my vacation. Remote, off the grid, a place to escape the chaos of city life. I wanted peace, quiet, and solitude. The website promised it all. A rustic wooden cabin nestled in the woods, overlooking a clear, still lake. The reviews were sparse but glowing. Perfect getaway, they said. Quiet, relaxing. I should have ignored them. I arrived late in the afternoon. The drive had been longer than I anticipated, winding through narrow mountain roads that seemed to twist endlessly, flanked by dense, towering pine forests. The sun was just setting when I finally reached the cabin. From the outside, it was picturesque. Smoke curled from the chimney, the wooden porch looked inviting, and the lake shimmered in the fading light. But as I stepped out of the car, I felt something I couldn't explain. A heaviness in the air, a sense that I was being watched. I brushed it off as exhaustion. The first night was unnerving, but I tried to convince myself it was just the unfamiliar surroundings. The forest seemed to hum softly, a faint whisper of wind. Or maybe it was something else. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of someone whispering my name. I sat up, heart pounding, flashlight in hand, and searched the cabin from top to bottom. Nothing. Just the silence of the woods pressing in. The next morning, I decided to explore the surrounding trails. According to the map I had printed, a short path led to a scenic overlook. The hike started pleasantly enough, sunlight filtering through the branches, birds chirping, the occasional rustle of small animals. But the deeper I went, the darker the forest became. Shadows seemed to move where no light should reach. I felt a prickle at the back of my neck, a persistent sense that I was not alone. Every time I turned around, I thought I saw movement, figures slipping between the trees. But whenever I looked directly, there was nothing. After what felt like hours, I reached a small clearing. In the center stood an old, decaying cabin. Its roof was sagging, paint long gone, and the windows were dark, lifeless. Something about it made my stomach turn. Curiosity pushed me closer. On the door were strange symbols carved into the wood, jagged lines, circles, and marks that almost looked like tallying. I stepped back, heart hammering. For a moment I considered leaving, but then I noticed a faint light flickering inside, like a candle. Against my better judgment, I peeked through the broken window. The interior was empty, but the air smelled of decay and smoke. Objects were scattered across the floor, old photographs, broken toys, and journals with brittle pages. I picked up one of the journals, flipping it open. The handwriting was frantic, smeared in places. The entries spoke of whispers calling the writer's name, shadows that moved independently, and a presence that watched constantly. The last entry was smudged with something dark. It waits in the woods. It waits in the water. It knows your name. Don't look. I dropped the journal, stomach churning. When I looked up, the clearing was empty. The forest around me felt suffocating, pressing in closer. Panic surged. I ran blindly along the path I had come, but the forest had shifted. The trail no longer existed. Every tree looked identical, and I had no sense of direction. My flashlight flickered as I stumbled, branches clawing at my face and arms. Eventually, I collapsed near the base of a massive pine, gasping for breath, tears streaming down my face. By nightfall, I somehow found my way back to my cabin. Relief was fleeting. The air inside smelled faintly of damp earth, and the wooden floors had scratches that hadn't been there before. Long, deep marks like claws. I barricaded the doors and windows as best I could and tried to sleep. But around 3 a.m., the whispers returned. Not just my name this time, other voices too. Children crying, women screaming, laughter that didn't belong anywhere. The shadows outside the windows shifted unnaturally, stretching and bending as if alive. The following morning, I resolved to leave. I packed quickly and ran to my car, only to find it missing. The gravel driveway was empty, replaced by an endless stretch of forest. I called out, hoping someone would answer, but only the echoes of my own voice returned. And then I saw them, figures emerging from the trees, tall, thin, faceless, moving silently toward me. My legs froze. Panic overwhelmed me as I realized I couldn't escape. I ran into the woods, desperate, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. The forest seemed alive, bending and shifting to trap me. I stumbled upon a small black lake, the surface perfectly still, reflecting the twisted trees above. And in the water, I saw my reflection, but not as it should have been. My eyes were hollow, black voids staring back at me, mouth open in a silent scream. The reflection moved independently, mocking me. I tripped backward, falling into the lake. Cold water engulfed me, pulling me under. When I emerged, I was back in the cabin, as if nothing had happened. The fire was burning. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows. The car, my bag, everything was gone. For a moment, I thought it had been a dream, but the whispering started again. From the corner of the room, my name. I tried leaving again, searching the forest for any sign of a path. Every exit led me back to the cabin. The trees seemed to move when I wasn't looking, closing in, rearranging themselves. Night fell quickly now, unnaturally fast, and the voices grew louder, forming a chorus of torment. Every reflective surface in the cabin, the mirrors, the lake, even the windows, showed something wrong. My face, twisted and hollow, screaming silently, warning me of what I was becoming. I've tried to warn anyone who might stumble upon this place. If you see a cabin on Shadow Lake, stay away. Don't look at the water, don't answer the whispers, and never, ever step inside. Once it knows your name, it follows you forever. I hear it now every night, whispering, calling, waiting. And I know that one day it will reach out to you too. Thanks for watching, my friends. If you want more true horror, like, comment, and subscribe.